Well, I think we've absorbed certain shocks. The onset of blogging, the idea that anyone could reach the public through having their own page was a shock. The onset of social media was kind of a shock because you had so many more participants, so many more producers, and certain first wave uses of that have become standard. For example, user-generated content, as in video shot by people of news events because they were there, or photographs taken of a disaster by amateurs who happened to be walking by, is now routine for almost all the major news organizations. So that level of citizens media, blogging, user-generated content, news breaking on Twitter before it's in the AP or the CP, is become routine. However, some of the more promising and consequential uses are harder than they looked at first. And I think there's a lot more work to be done.
Like what kind of uses?
Well, for example, distributed reporting, open source reporting, where you have lots of people working on one reporting project, which is something I'm very interested in. It's just harder to do than distributing the tools for it. And I think we need to learn how to do that. The use of citizens or users to help pour through documents is occasionally effective, but we need to learn a lot more about how that works.
Right.
Networks of bloggers who can become kind of a force in local news, allied with a local news organization, is harder to manage and set up and motivate and compensate those people than it looked at first. So those are they're like harder problems that are going to occupy a lot of time and attention over the next few years. The original thought, which was a very crude thought, that low-cost or free content produced by amateurs can substitute for the very high cost of professionally produced journalism, is a bust. It doesn't work. It was kind of a fairy tale to start with. And as I said, it was a very crude idea. And many businesses have been started with that premise. I don't know any of them that are really succeeding as businesses. And so the idea of saving lots of money by using citizen journalists instead of pro journalists is basically a lie. So the reason why you might want to do it has to do with engagement, which has now become a buzzword, but the idea of engagement as a critical factor in the success of online journalism, which means not only how much time people spend on your site, but how connected they are to it, how much they trust or feel involved in it, how invested they are in it, as a tool for increasing engagement, which in turn can lead to a business model. Citizen journalism, citizen media makes a lot of sense. I also think that professional news organizations face a slow, simmering crisis of trust, and engaging with people, allowing them to participate more in how you collect news and sift it and deliver it, can be a way of building trust, and that's important to the long-term survival of these organizations, but that's not exactly a business model.
Right.
A lot of times when people ask me a question like this, like, what's the business model? I feel like you're asking the wrong question. It's not that the business model isn't important, it's that you don't discover it by going right at it. Instead, you discover it by doing things that are very effective, making yourself more efficient, increasing engagement, increasing trust, using these tools for what they can do.
So it'll come maybe organically through those?
Yeah, somewhat organically. I mean, I think that's kind of a buzzword too, but as in motion a business model emerges.
Right.
And what you have to do is start moving. I don't really understand that criticism. I mean, if you give people tools to produce media, to share what they make, they're going to use it for things initially that are just important and meaningful to them. The idea that that's some sort of surprise or discovery or damning indictment of citizens' media is just so silly to me. Why would they pick up these tools and necessarily use them for what you use them for as a professional journalist? Hard news. Why would you think that? It doesn't seem like a logical place to start.
Right.
Now, if a mommy blogger happens to go to a political event and meets the candidate afterwards and goes home to blog about it, the chances are very good that she's going to write about her encounter with the candidate. Not because she's trying to report hard news, but because it happened to her in her life.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes what happens is that professional journalists hear about citizen media, citizens journalists, and they immediately picture the person out there, the citizen, as kind of a miniature journalist, or almost like a pet journalist, right? And then when they don't behave like a pet journalist,
they're all shocked. Yeah.
They're shocked. Whereas we should start with the assumption that people use these tools to make meaning within their own lives. And sometimes that means they're ready to act as journalists. And when they are, then professional news organizations should have the tools, the openness, the instructions, and the frictionless systems for making that possible. And that's, I think, where they should place their